ayah in the parsha of Xukot Torah. After asking all types of questions on the Xukot Torah, there's two names of Yud Kei Vav Kei. The lower name of the first Yud Kei Vav Kei is going on Ze'er Ampin, on the Midas, and the second level that is already limited, that has to do with Seder Shtalshlus. The second level is the level of Yud Kei Vav Kei that has to do with Atik. Atik means that it's completely removed and beyond everything. And in continuation of that, the Rebbe started explaining to be able to understand how these two things become joined in the idea of Para Aduma, and the Chukas HaTorah joins the both of them together. So now we need to go into the mile of Torah, the special idea of Torah, that it says that Torah was shashuyim lefonav. It was a delight, it was a plaything, it was an enjoyable thing, which means delight is something beyond our necessities. And that's the idea of what we have, or that's the idea of Torah, is Hashem's delight. So we're holding, again, middle of Ois Gimel, on the fourth page of the Maimer, page Yud Ches, line 13. So this delight, the Rebbe goes on to explain in line 13, this comes down completely in a revealed way down here below at the giving of the Torah. This is what it says in the Gemara, that in Matan Torah was given something beloved and hidden. So the question is, seemingly it's not understood. Already prior to Matan Torah, Avram was a sage and he was sitting and studying. Yaakov, the same thing. Yaakov were sages and studying. There was never a study hall that left. There was never a time that our forefathers did not have a study hall, even in Mitzrayim, even in Egypt. How much more so when we talk about the yeshiva of above, the yeshiva of Hashem. So therefore, how do we say that by the giving of the Torah, that the hidden, beloved thing of Hashem was given, it was already available and free and for the usage already before Matan Torah? And a simple meaning, Chemda Gnuza means a guy goes into his safe, pulls something out and says, this treasure that's been a family heirloom for long and whatever, here it is, I'm giving this to you. But it wasn't concealed, it wasn't hidden away, it was something that was in use up till now. So the Rebbe explains in line 22, the idea behind this is, that on the quality of the Torah that was not revealed prior to Matan Torah. That's the Chemda Gnuza, the beloved object, the higher level of Torah. So, what's that? That special level that wasn't revealed beforehand. That's the idea of Hashashuyim v'atainug lefonav yisborach. That Torah is Hashem's plaything. It's His delight. It's an enjoyable thing for Hashem. But Matan Torah is a nimshach v'nizgal lamata dafke, and by the giving of the Torah, it was specifically revealed down here below. Like the exact expression used in Amar Chassidus, Matan Torah Matan Torah was not that they raised up Har Sinai on Shemayim, or they raised up the Yidden and put them on Shemayim to receive the Torah. But rather it was in a manner that Havaya, Hashem descended on Har Sinai, Kifish and Nishar, top of Yutes, the way Mount Sinai remained down here below. That's how the Torah was given, on the physical Har Sinai down here below. Until it was drawn down and given down here below in the lowest thing, that there's nothing lower than it. Like the expression in the Gemara is, when the Malachim wanted to keep the Torah, so Moshe Rabbeinu told the Malachim, did you then descend to Mitzrayim, Yetzahara yesh benechem, do you have an evil nation? In other words, the Torah was given in the lowest place, in a place where there's a Mitzrayim and a place where there's a Yetzahara. The root of this idea, that there could be this coming down of the Torah in the most loftiest levels, the way it is, the delight of Hashem. That should come down here. When you have the joining of the two names Havaya that was said by Zois Chukas HaTorah, that the Torah encompasses and has in it the Havaya that's higher than Seder Shtalshus, the Havaya of Atik. And that comes into the Seder Shtalshus of Zeir Anpin, Shebechinas Atik Shalamayla Miktzavis Nimshechas Lamata Chulum, that the level of Atik that's beyond ends and limitations, etc., comes down here below. So he says in the second paragraph on the page, line 7, since the idea of Torah is a lesson, a directive, like we mentioned earlier, the greatness of Torah study is that it brings to action. So therefore, these two extremes of Torah, that on the one hand it's Hashem's delight, and on the other hand it reaches to the lowest, most level in this world. Also mitzvahs has these two extremes. So Atik, because beyond extremes, could join two extremes. And the mitzvahs, there's the same thing. The mitzvahs are a very lofty thing. That comes down all the way below. Behind this means on the one hand, mitzvahs has something that's even higher than Torah. What is that idea that it's higher than Torah? That by mitzvah, concerning mitzvahs, we say that we preface, we will do to understanding. So that means that the doing, the action of the mitzvahs is greater even than Torah study, greater even than understanding. Why is that greater? Because by stating that fact, we are sublimating ourselves not to the individual will, because we don't even know what the will is yet, but we are sublimating and subjugating ourselves and nullifying ourselves to the master of the will to say, whatever you tell us, we will do. We don't even know what it is. We haven't yet heard what it is. That's the point of the general idea of mitzvahs. Let's explain at the end of the Mittler Rebbe's Ateres Roish. Over there, he speaks about the general intention that all mitzvahs share in common. The common denominator of the intention on every mitzvah is Kenusach Birchas Kol HaMitzvahs, like the language used in the bracha on all mitzvahs, Asher Kiddushanu Mitzvahs V'Tzivanu, that he sanctified us in his mitzvahs and he commanded us. Shu Inyan Kiyum Ritzayin Hashem. It's about fulfilling the will of Hashem. Ritzayin Aboyde, the will of the Creator. Nois Na Torah Mitzav HaMitzvahs, the one who gives the Torah and commands the mitzvahs. So that is the core point of every mitzvah. Rak Lacher is only after that bittul to the Balarotz, after that idea that I'm going to fulfill the will of the Creator, that common intention by all mitzvahs, after we have that baseline, Yeshna Kavona, Vasgula Protis, Shokol Mitzvah Protis, you have the individual, unique intention and the specialty of every mitzvah individually, what that stands for and what that's about. Behind this means, though fulfilling a mitzvah has to be done out of enjoyment. The basis, the foundation for all mitzvahs is that I'm fulfilling the will of Hashem. Like the Chazal say, that if we would have been commanded to chop wood, we would have done that as well as any other mitzvah. In other words, the point of comparing mitzvahs to being commanded to chopping wood is the idea that we are only about fulfilling Hashem's will. That is one extreme of the mitzvah. That the mitzvah is the bittul to the highest level beyond Torah, the bittul to the Ratzon of Hashem. On the other hand, the idea of mitzvahs is measured and has a boundary. Top of page Chof, ubegashmi is dafke specifically in the physical. Sharikim, a mitzvah shayach be'um haza gashmi dafke, because the fulfillment of mitzvahs is only something that we could do, can only be done in this physical world. Masha'en kim Gan Eden, as opposed to Gan Eden. It's similar to what it says concerning Mashiach's times, that there will be days that I have no desire in them, that there will be no fulfillment of mitzvahs. So in Gan Eden, which is similar to the days of where it says Ein Lebam Chayfetz, Shesham Yesh Lein L'Matoyer Balvad, that in Gan Eden there's no idea of fulfilling mitzvahs. There's only Torah study. Kim avoid Begeres HaKodesh, like it's explained in Tanya and the Geras HaKodesh. So that's the lowest extreme of mitzvahs. It's dafka in this world, as opposed to also the other extreme of the mitzvahs that's higher even than Torah. It's the bittul to the rotz. So in Ois Daled, he's going to explain these two extremes also in a person. So too, there's these two aspects. Also in the person concerning his general avodah, that is the goal of his creation. Like the Chazal say, I was only created to serve my Maker. The two aspects of the two extremes in a person's avodah, just like there's the two components of the Torah and two components of mitzvahs, are the two aspects in a person's avodah of rushing towards Hashem and returning and descending down here. This is what the Chazal say in Pirkei Avos, you are alive against your will, meaning the neshama wants to rush out of the body, wants to leave the limitations of this world. Like it's hinted in Tanya, as explained at length in Mamor Chassidus, if not for the fact that against it, the neshama's will, it is inserted into this world. The neshama would be in a movement of desire and going upwards without return, without settling into the body. Like those that entered the orchard, that entered Gan Eden, that only one of them returned because three of them stayed in the Tnuah of Rotzi. Rabbi Akiva was the exception, that he didn't just stay in the Tnuah of Rotzi, he entered in peace and he returned and he exited in peace, meaning he had the Rotzi, but he also had the Shuv. So that idea of the neshama left to its own devices would be going upwards without any type of stop to it, without anything holding it back down. But that is not the only thing. Along with the rotzi, there's also the return. How come? That's because the advantage of the avodah specifically in the land, in doing the avodah down here in the world, that's why it's not enough to Ratzu. There has to be the shoiv, the return. And for this very reason, because Moshe Rabbeinu saw the great advantage of doing the mitzvahs that involved the land, that involved the earth. So Moshe Rabbeinu wanted specifically to enter Eretz Yisrael. These two approaches of the running towards Hashem and the return back down here in the service of the person, because these two types of avodas, there is in the person's own nefesh, there's two aspects of his neshama, or two aspects of his nefesh. The primary part of the person is his nefesh alakis, or is the neshama, is whatever is his life force. Every Jewish person has two neshamas that they are the ikir. Nefesh alakis v'nefesh baham is the godly and the animal soul. Though they are comparable to each other, because they have to insert to a certain degree work with each other, so they need to be able to fit. They have to have some type of relation. Tafresh Ayin Beis, top of page Chaf Aleph. It's explained in the series Mamorim of Ayin Beis. Hareihem. Still in all, these two nefashos of the Nefesh Alakis, Nefesh Abamis, they are minakotza lakotza. They are from two extremes. Nefesh Alakis Ruach Adam Shailamalo. That the godly soul is likened to the spirit of man, that it says in the pasuk, that goes upwards. That's the idea of nefesh elokis. It's drawing upwards, drawing towards Hashem. It's the spirit of an animal that descends down below. So their directions are just the opposite. Just like Rotzi Vishuv are opposites. So therefore Hashem has in the person two opposite directions in his neshama. The very fact that there could be housed within the person these two nefashos that are going in opposite directions, well, since also in the godly soul itself, which the godly soul itself is, though it's primary, like we have in Tanya the term that the neshama is primary and the body is ancillary. So the same thing, the nefesh habahamis is only ancillary and secondary. So in the nefesh elokis itself, there's the two sides of the equation. Yeshlam shnei in yonim elu. There's also these two aspects. Hainu haregel shebeneshama. There's the foot of the neshama. What's the foot of the neshama? Shezeu chelik haneshama mislavish beguf. It's the part of the neshama that's enclosed in the body. Ad shenasa etzloi oilamais b'pshitas v'alakus bizchachas. To such a degree, from the perspective of the neshama and the body, the worlds are taken for granted. That there are worlds, existence, creation, that's something that's taken for granted. That's not something you need to discuss or argue about or debate. It's a given. Whereas godliness and Hashem is something you got to think, oh, I have proofs and this and that. There must be a Eibishter. On the other hand, the other extreme of the neshama, of the nefesh elokis itself, mazel shebeneshama, there's the level of the neshama. It's called the mazel. Shezeu iker neshama shalamayla. That's the primary part of the neshama. It's above. That's not enclosed in the body, not involved in the physical world down here, but it has a connection. Ela shenikra mazel. It's called mazel maloshen noisel, from the word that it's running or dripping. That a ray of the mazel also shines into the body. How do we know that it shines into the body like it's understood from the story that brings down about those that were surrounding Daniel during his prophecy, that they started trembling, and the Gemara says even though they didn't see the prophecy, they trembled. Why? Even though they did not see, or he did not see, his mazel saw. So, but still in all, that mazel impacted, and he was trembling, even though he didn't know, he didn't actually appreciate the prophecy. The Rebbe goes on to say, like we see, even concerning those things that in a revealed way, they have no connection whatsoever with the mazel. Even more so, they're the opposite of the mazel. Like it's understood, in other words, they're the opposite of the level of the neshama, the highest level of the neshama, the shoyrish neshama above, that's called the mazel. Like the Alter Rebbe brings concerning even wild animals, even animals that will kill people, the Alter Rebbe brings down that they, as opposed to someone that doesn't have Aveda, does not transgress their commands of Hashem, and they wouldn't harm a person only because he looks at them like an animal, etc., etc. But it's tzaddik, they won't harm, etc. Why is it? Because they, even though afagav diulachazi, the Alter Rebbe says, even though the animals don't appreciate all these things about following Hashem's directive and who it's supposed to attack and who not, but their mazel above sees. So we see even by an animal there's a concept, and a wild animal, the mazel of the animal above affects it. How much more so, it's the mazel of a Jew, the shoyrish and neshama above, affects it. So those are the two extremes. The neshama, that's the foot of the neshama, that's enclosed in the body, in the physical world, and therefore the world is taken for granted, and godliness you need to meditate upon, etc., as opposed to the mazel of the neshama. Then the Rebbe goes on to say further how you find this in many other situations. And from these two aspects that's to be found in a person's soul, that there's the mazel of the neshama and the regel from neshama, comes down afterwards in the avodah of every single Jew. Heim b'chlolos avodah, both in the general avodah, v'heim b'chol inyan shel avodah, both in every matter of a yid service. There has to be both points, both rushing towards Hashem and the return down here, which is expressed in all these different aspects that we find in a person. Like it's explained in the Mamarim with the title that the Malachim that are called the Chayas were rushing and they were returning. And specifically, page Chav Beis, B'dibra Maskal Zeluk, like just it's even more specifically in the Maimer of my father-in-law, of the Frierdiker Rebbe, that he said this in the year Tafshin Daled. Shumiyusad ala Maimer L'Kutei Torah, but the Maimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe, titled Lachayis Rotzev V'Shuv, is based on a Maimer L'Kutei Torah. She'amari Admor Azokin ala Chasna, the Shlobin Ki Yeduam, that the Alter Rebbe said this. There was a very famous wedding of the Alter Rebbe's granddaughter with the Rabbi Yitzchak Barditchever's grandson. It's known as the Zlobiner Chasana. It was in a city called Zlobin, and that was a lot of Giluyim took place at that wedding. When the Alter Rebbe came together with Rabbi Yitzchak Barditchever there. Shekol Inyan. So over there in that, the Mamorim titled by Vachayis Rotzev V'Shuv, it says Shekol Inyan Shubechiras Yesh Me'ayin, everything that is created Tzarech Liyos Ba'ofen the Rotzev V'Shoivchul, has to be both in a way of rushing towards Hashem and returning. Meaning that's what Pshat Vachayis Rotzev V'Shoiv. The simple meaning is, like I said before, the Malachim, but on a deeper idea, it means that everything that has chayis, everything that is enlivened by Hashem, which is all creation, that energy causes and brings out that it rushes upwards and it returns. He says, V'hainu, line 6, Sheitzel Kol Echad Misrael, by every single Yid, Gam B'doros HaAchronim, even in the latter generations, that seemingly we would think that in our generations, we are shaykh to Ratzu, we are shaykh to rushing towards Hashem. Still in all, it's all things that have a divine energy have this. So therefore, shaykh in an avoida boifin shel Ratzu, it's applicable to avoid in a manner of rushing towards Hashem. Like it's also understood from the fact that Drushim and Iskarm La'el, Shebehem Nisbayin HaRatzu, the Mamorim that was mentioned previously from the Alter Rebbe and the Frierdiker Rebbe, what that's explained, the idea of this Ratzui, Nizgalu B'doros Achronim, were revealed in the latter generations. If there was no purpose and no idea in having this in the latter generations, it wouldn't have become revealed. Along with this, there's also the return that they came out in peace, like it says by Rabbi Kiva. That's the idea of shoif. Let's learn one more ois at least. This idea that in every type of service there has to be the rushing towards Hashem and the return is emphasized in a revealed way in all the mitzvahs of the Torah and the mitzvah of Paraduma. Let's explain the Amarim. Burning up the heifer is the idea of the Rotzi, because fire is about rushing upwards. It's about drawing upwards. When it's in this Maim Chaim, the idea of pouring wellspring water, living water in Nashoif, because water is Maim Hayardim Mokum Gavoil Mokum Namuch. It's about descending and cooling off the heat and the passion that wants to go upwards. That's why Paradum is called the Chukah of the Torah, not Chukas HaPara, like we said before. These two matters of Ratz V'Shoiv, that over there, this is emphasized in a revealed way in the mitzvah Paraduma. It's the entire Torah. Who's the called Ikra Torah mitzvahs is founded, the entire idea of Torah mitzvahs. The reason why this is called a chukah, which is something super rational, because very difficult to join these two opposite movements of Ratziv v'Shoiv. Similar to the difficulty of transforming sea to dry land and the splitting of the sea, like the Chazal always say, it's as difficult as the splitting of the sea because you're dealing with two extremes. It's metaphorically speaking difficult because from the perspective of the way Hashem created the sea and the dry land, these are opposite things.